Hi there. Tonight I'm going to show you how to make bannock. I know some people struggle with their bannock making skills. I'm going to show you the easiest way that I know how. I've been making bannock for a very long time, and it's kind of a technique that you have to perfect on your own. Tonight we're having Indian tacos, so I decided that, hey, what the heck, I'll show everybody how I make my bannock. I do have a recipe, and the recipe calls for 5 cups of flour, 3 tablespoons of baking soda, 2 tablespoons of sugar, and 1 tablespoon of salt. Teaspoon of salt. So I'm not going to make that much. That would feed a whole family. I am going to just make a little bit for our Indian tacos tonight. And what I'm using is we're going to deep fry it today, but my bannock recipe works for both deep fried and for baked bannock. The baked bannock is the healthier option. But Indian tacos are always made deep fried, so that's what we're going to do tonight. So right now I'm using 100% canola oil. And I want it pretty deep in the pan, about a couple inches, so the bannock has enough room to deep fry. This is the baking grease. When I bake my bannock, at the end of the baking process, I put baking grease all over it. It kind of makes it softer, and it makes it a little bit more chewier. It's just sitting there for now. I'm not using it today. So with the recipe, the more you make it, the easier it gets. The less you'll have to measure. I don't measure anymore. But what I do is I measure all my flour, all my ingredients, my dry ingredients. I mix it in the bowl first. So I tend to use a lot of baking powder compared to other recipes. It does make your bannock a little bit fluffier. And that's why I use the sugar and salt. Older ladies, when they taste your bannock, they'll be like, oh, you put too much baking powder, I can taste it. So that's why I use the sugar and salt. The sugar to give it a little sweetness, and the salt kind of just to take a little bit of that sweetness away. You don't even have to use salt if you didn't want to. So, once I have all my dry ingredients, I'll mix it up. And I'll take a handful from the middle. And I'll put it on my cutting board. Then I make a well. See the well? I make a well in the bowl, and that's what I fill up with warm water. You don't want to use cold water. It'll make your bannock very dense, and it's harder to work with. So what I do is I just fill up the well. In my recipe, it doesn't call for how much cups of water, but I'm thinking maybe a 3/4 cup of water for every cup of flour you use. And I gradually take a little bit in on the sides to like come up with like a sticky paper mache kind of mixture. I was joking around one time to a friend of mine, and I told her, my bannock's so good, I don't even have to turn it, flip it. It'll flip itself in the oil. She didn't believe me, and then one time I asked her, can you watch my bannock? I need to go do something real quick. And she's like, when I came back, she's like, oh my God, your bannock flipped itself. It's like, I told you. So after that, I put the sticky mixture on the cutting board, and I just roll it. You'll notice if you have too much flour that it'll be kind of flaky. We don't want flaky. And that's all there is to it. It's very, 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 very simple. I usually turn on my oil as soon as I start mixing my bannock. So by the time I'm done mixing it, the oil's hot. And how I check is I drop in a little bit from my fingers. That's a little bit of bannock left on my fingers. And if it's floating and if it's bubbling, it's hot. And when I'm making bannock for my family and my friends, I usually use a cup to measure each piece. But if other people, they cut it in like sections, just with their knife. Whatever you'd like to do. But one of the things that my mother taught me is that if you do cut your bannock like this, don't use a knife to cut a hole in it. It looks way better if you just use your fork and poke it with a fork. That way the air circulates throughout your bannock more, and it looks different. So maybe I will show you. I have enough. Yeah, tonight we're having Indian tacos, so this is how one looks, and then the other one, where I use these. And if you're making Indian tacos, you just take a small and always make sure you dust off your dough first. It keeps your oil cleaner. So if you'll see here, in one, we don't have an air bubble by the cut. But in this one, it's just basically rising all over. But this one has air bubbles in it. As soon as it's golden brown, you flip it. This oil seems kind of hot to me. It very well could be. So I did turn it down. And you'll notice I'm making holes on each side of the bannock. Once that is done, I'm going to take some fresh paper towels, napkins, whatever you have on hand. Sometimes if I don't have napkins or paper towels, I will use a coffee filter. And there you have it, how to make fried bannock.